Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven. My wonderful guest tonight is Robert Sullivan the Fourth, and I just want to tell everybody we have a new chat room now, and it is so cool in there. I encourage everybody to hop in the chat if you haven't already. Go into Revolution Radio and go into the chat room. You have to register, but don't get spooked by that. It's really nice, secure, quiet, and very, very nice. And so get in there and enjoy. And we have some great questions as well. And once again, Robert, let everybody know how to access your website and how to get your books. And also, you have signed copies that you also sell, correct?
No, I do not,
Oh, you
actually.
don't? Okay, I
No,
kept thinking you did. Okay.
no. No, the books are sold exclusively online. They're available in all major retailers like Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Books a Million. You can get the ebooks. There are places like Ebook Mall and Kobo. You can get them all over the place. Certainly, if you have a copy and you run into me or I'm giving a lecture, I will gladly sign it for you, of course. But I actually don't sell signed copies myself. But like I said, the book's available all over the place on all the major online retailers. More on me and get the book. I mean, certainly you can go to Amazon, just type in the title, it'll come up. But my website is my name. My name is Robert W. Sullivan IV. So my website is www.robertwsullivan, the letter I, the letter V, IV.com for the fourth, robertwsullivan.iv.com. Links there to buy the books. Like I said, Pact with the Devil is just out. You can get the print copy. The ebook is not available yet, but the ebooks are available of Royal Arts, Cinema Symbolism, and Cinema Symbolism 2. Or if the print copy's your fancy, you can get that as well, no problem. You can get them on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million. If you're overseas and you're listening, you can get them on the affiliate, the Amazon UK or Canada, or Australia site. And there are sites overseas that sell them as well, such as Blackstone's, Waterstone's, Booktopia. That's in Australia. They have them. And again, if you just go to my website, there's information about me, my biography, links to my social media, Twitter, my YouTube channel, where I literally have under playlists probably hundreds of hours of interviews archived. Follow me on Twitter. Links about, I have an events and appearance page with upcoming radio and shows I'm going to be doing. A media and press page about magazine interviews and other podcasts and things like that. It's a very easy site to navigate. And of course, links to buy the books. RobertWSullivanIV.com. It's www.robertwsullivanIV.com. Like I said, very easy to navigate. Information about me. Just go there. All your questions will be answered.
Perfect. Yeah, I encourage everybody to do that. So, yeah, you're a wellspring of data. Like I said, I just enjoy listening to you, and I never get tired of interviewing you. You're just very, very in-depth insofar as your knowledge goes, and I think people should take advantage of that in a good way, by purchasing your books and supporting your work. And also, you're definitely worth paying for presentations. So, you're worth it. There's no doubt about that. I have a question for you. I know we kind of talked about this before, probably in a few other shows, but I like this concept, and I wanted to kind of talk about it again. But the concept of Elvis Presley and his association with the sun god.
Oh, absolutely. This is a really fascinating study. And this is something that's in the first book, the first cinema book. And it's funny because when I was writing Cinema Symbolism 2, I actually discovered a few more of these, and I actually found another one of recent. But I'll just get into this a little bit. Yeah, the whole idea with this, and I didn't want people to think that Elvis was some sort of reincarnated Jesus figure or anything like that. But I put it into more akin to synchronicity. Certainly, Apollo was the sun god, was a god of music, and Elvis, his entire life, for whatever reason. I can't quite come up with an answer for it. Revolves around the sun, quite literally. You have him. Elvis was born in the house of Capricorn, same as Jesus, which is the house which the winter solstice occurs under, which of course is the celebration of Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa. This is December 25th, and Elvis was born in January, early January. So we have Elvis being born under the sign of the resurrected sun, the born again sun. And of course, Elvis dies in August, which is Leo, which is the sole house of the sun. So we have that, his birth and death is marked by the sun. His music, you have, you return to the Egyptian symbolism with things like, the Nile River and the temples of the sun along, the Nile. And then, I get into more in depth in the book, but then you have, of course, in America, the new Egypt, the new world. And of course, the Mississippi would be the parallel, to the Nile. And then, of course, we have the Temple of the Sun there, Sun Records, which is where Elvis put out his early music, the Temple of the Sun there on Mississippi. And then later on in life, if you watch his jumpsuits, it's always a solar symbol, the Mayan calendar or whatever. And then he came out on stage. I mean, if you've ever watched Elvis later in life, he was always coming out on stage to the Richard Strauss theme, Alzo Sprach Zarathustra. This is the theme music to 2001, I guess, is more commonly known. Well, that music that he came out to, the actual title of that sequence of music is actually called Sunrise, of all things. And then, of course, you have the whole idea also with Elvis, and this is interesting, it's almost like a quasi-solar religion, and you think of a parallel with Christianity, where after Elvis died, you have Graceland being the holy site, the site of pilgrimage, Graceland, to visit the grave. And then you have rumors that Elvis, much akin to Christ, was resurrected, survived his own death, or that Elvis is still alive and still with us. This is just a really interesting study. I ascribe it more to Jungian synchronicity. Is what I talk about in the book, that it just seemed to be that this man's life was hallmarked with this Apollonian solar musical symbolism. And I'm not quite sure why that is, but there it is, and it's there, and it's irrefutable. And if you're interested in this, by all means, check out the first movie book, Cinema Symbolism. I got into it more in depth in that one. When I was writing Cinema Symbolism 2, I actually found some more parallels. And actually, as I'm writing Cinema Symbolism 3, I actually found some more parallels. So it seems like it's a never-ending study. But yeah, it's just fascinating. Another example of this, this synchronicity, is Houdini, if you want to see this in another way. The great magician who was born 26 years before the turn of the last century, died 26 years after the turn of the century, 52 years old, master magician, 52 cards in a deck, the ultimate tool of the magician. So you have things like that, in people's lives. I'm not sure why it turns out that way, but like I said, I just ascribe it to Jungian synchronicity. It seems to be the way the nature wants it, I suppose.
Wow, that's really interesting about the Houdini. That's something. Boy, the way you put things together just blows my mind.
Well, this is so critical to me, Solaris, when I'm writing, is a lot of people, and I'm not going to name names. I'm not a fan of criticizing other people. When I do shows, what I do instead is I just talk about my research and my work. And if you like it, that's great. If you don't like it, hey, I don't force anyone to listen to me. You can turn me off anytime you want to. But when I was doing this, so much of it was when I was writing this, when I was putting this together, and I turned to like the mid 2000s and the advent of YouTube. And I was listening to a lot of presenters talking about this, and unfortunately, I found it not being done with any context. It wasn't being put into a framework. It was just being thrown out there as some sort of evidence of like a vast conspiracy. And what my research and what my books were really trying to do is to pin the symbolism down, but then to present to you, the reader, the correct context of it. So to let you know that this is being done. There's a method to this. It's not just being done willy-nilly. It's not just all default mind control or demonism. There's a divine synchronicity to this. And we get into this, like why Hermes appears on, symbols of education, or why the cornerstone of the Supreme Court is laid on this date, not that date. It works in movies. When Nina Sayers in Black Swan is entering the building and turns and looks at the poster of Beth McIntyre, Winona Ryder, you'll see the date on it of February 12th. Well, the whole movie falls apart if it's the date of February 11th or February 13th. It has to be February 12th. Same thing with Back to the Future, the number 88 in that, very synchronetic, very symbolic. If it was 89 miles an hour, it wouldn't work. So for my work, for me, is not only decoding it, but putting in its correct contextual base. So you understand, okay, now I understand why it's being done. And now, I understand why this is being done here, but not done here, but it's being done here, but it's in a different context. That's what a lot of my books really stress and emphasize.
That's what I like about it. Yeah, your approach is, I want to say it's even more intellectual than people realize, but it's nice to see that breakdown, because a lot of people do, like I said, they get the misperceptions and misrepresentation of what they think things are out of fear or programming or what their own personas or personalities can handle. So I certainly appreciate the work you're doing. Now I have a question about the double-headed eagle, just because the symbolism behind that, is that duality, or what exactly does that represent?
Yeah, the double-headed eagle is this is a symbol of the Scottish Rite. It's probably the most important symbol of the Scottish Rite. When you're dealing with the high degrees of Freemasonry, when you get into the one thing it immediately conjures is you can look at it as emblems of duality. There's a in the early Rite of Perfection, you'll find this today, is the master sovereign of East and West. Hence, the eagle looks both ways, east and west. You have that symbolism when you're dealing with the Scottish Rite and the high degrees. This is all a product of the Counter-Reformation. So we're dealing with themes of papal monarchy, Roman Catholicism, think Christian Kabbalah, even Hebrew Kabbalah. We have the double-headed eagle being the symbol of the Habsburg, the Holy Roman Emperor. Holy Roman Empire. So we have the Scottish Rite being sort of a continuation of esoteric divinity, esoteric monarchy. You will find a departure in the high degrees from the Blue Lodge. In the Blue Lodge, this is degrees 1, 2, and 3 of Freemasonry. We have themes of democracy, egalitarianism, equality, things like that. This is not the case when you get into the high degrees. You are definitely dealing with things of apotheosis, divine monarchy, divine right, Christian Kabbalah. It's a bit of a departure from the Blue Lodge. That's done intentionally, though. Again, this was cultivated during the Counter-Reformation by the Society of Jesus, so this should not come as a surprise. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at the double-headed eagle of the Scottish Rite, you immediately think of the Holy Roman Empire, Roman Catholicism, and again, the high degrees definitely signify this break with the Blue Lodge, where the Blue Lodge is much more embodying themes of egalitarianism, democracy, equality, brotherhood, death, reawakening. When you get into the high degrees, you're dealing with themes of apotheosis, rebirth to divinity, Roman Catholicism, Kabbalah, things like that. And it has a different feel to it. So the double-headed eagle, we have the whole thing, Knights of the East and West, with the eagle looking both ways, but also, I would say, turn to the Holy Roman Empire, Roman Catholicism, Roman mysticism, things of that nature. You'll find embedded in the higher degrees of the Scottish Rite, much more than you find in the Blue Lodge.
Right, that's a great answer. And let me ask you about the Vatican. Is there a correlation with that and the Vatican and their Jesuits?
Well, the Jesuits. What happens is, it's a long story. What happens is you have the Reformation occur of Martin Luther, and you have in England the booting out, for lack of a better word, the Roman Catholic Church, where the Church of England is formed, which is Anglican. It's a Protestant church, and it's set up. The Church of England is structured exactly the way the Roman Catholic Church is, only there's no Pope. The Pope is the English monarch. The English monarch, the king or queen, is the de facto head of the Church of England. And this ticks off the Pope in Rome. And then in the mid-1500s, you have the Council of Trent, I believe it is, where the Counter-Reformation is hatched. And this is in charge with the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, who, for lack of a better word, are charged with the total annihilation of Western civilization. This is the gunpowder plot of Guy Fawkes, where they tried to blow up the English monarch. This is the Spanish Armada, where they tried to take out England. Think the Great Fire of London of 1666, where the Jesuits burnt England to the ground, or London to the ground. The Jesuits from the 1500s on are charged with the destruction of Western civilization, for lack of a better word. You have in 1717 Freemasonry proper come along in England, where else the archenemy of the Roman Catholic Church becomes very popular, spreads to the continent of Europe. Egalitarian, pro English monarch, pro Protestant English monarch, Whiggery, very democratic, supports parliamentary in government, supports an English monarch, but only if it's Protestant. The Jesuits turn their crosshairs on this, and they think, well, we can't get rid of it, so let's corrupt it, and not corrupt it, but let's infiltrate it with these high degrees, which is hatched at the College of Claremont. In Paris, France. The Scottish Rite is not Scottish in nature. It is born in Paris. It's French in nature. There's a reason why it has a Scottish influence to it, though. But the whole mechanism of the Scottish Rite and the high degrees was to topple the English government and to restore a Stuart pretender back to the throne of England. And again, you have to be familiar with the English Civil War. You have to be familiar with the Glorious Revolution of 1688. This Masonry walks hand in hand with this. And it's a very deep history. I get into it much more. I'm just scratching the surface of this because of time constraints. Believe me, Solaris, I could talk about this for another 3 hours. But I get into this in much more in depth in the Royal Arch of Enoch book. I mean, there's some people out there, such as Elias Ashmole, who thought that the Masonic ritual, the high degree, not the high degree, excuse me, the Blue Lodge ritual of Hiram Abiff was actually reflecting the English Civil War with Oliver Cromwell and Charles I. So this is a real deep history. You have to understand what was going on in England. Then you get into the high degrees and what they were formulated to do. Of course, by the time France was the major ally of the Americas, during the American Revolution. So it would be no surprise that the high degrees take off here. By the time they get into the United States, they're actually piecemealed into the United States through Haiti, of all things. And by the time they get here, the Jesuits are out of the picture. They take off, they become very popular, and the Jesuits, they actually get the Jesuits actually get suppressed in 1773 by the Pope. Their occult meddlings, their political meddlings in Europe are so overwhelming that the Pope in Rome actually suppresses the Society of Jesus in 1773. They reemerge 3 years later. The Jesuits do, calling themselves the Bavarian Illuminati. This is just the Jesuits under another name. All the leaders of the Bavarian Illuminati were Jesuit trained. This was exposed by a Freemason named Adolf Knigge, who wrote a treatise saying, don't buy into this stuff with the Illuminati, that they're anti-Rome and that they're anti-this and that they're anti-monarchy. He said this is just a more Jesuit counter-Reformationism. This is all just a trick. And this seems to be the case because it seems that the Illuminati of Weishaupt, people like Ignaz von Born, Xavier Zwack, sort of carried the Jesuits, carried the Society of Jesus through the Napoleonic Wars. And then, once the Napoleonic Wars came to an end, what do we have? Oh, boom, the restoration of the Society of Jesus, the restoration of the Papal States, and everything was back to normal. So, yeah, it's a really deep... This is why I like Freemasonry so much and writing about it, talking about it. It really does overlap so much in history, whether it be English history, the United States, philosophy. There's so much going on with this that it overlaps and ties in. It's really a deep study. If you're interested, by all means, check out the Royal Arch of Enoch book.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So that's very interesting about the Jesuits' connection to Illuminati, or in the illusion of the Illuminati. So that's for real, huh?
Oh, absolutely. That's for real. And it's a tie-in with Freemasonry as well. When you get into the high degrees, you will definitely see a Jesuit influence with this. And also, I mean, with the creation of the Blue Lodge, what's the symbol of the society? I mean, I argue this in the book, and many people have suggested this. And I agree with it as with the Society of Jesus. I mean, what's their symbol? It's the sun. And you can look at Freemasonry as being created as sort of a reaction to the Jesuits, sort of a Protestant mystical brotherhood. What's the premier symbol of Freemasonry? It's the sun. So you have this interaction between the Society of Jesus and Freemasonry. The two walk hand in hand. When you really come to understand it, you will understand that the Jesuits and I mean they're not linked to each other formally, but esoterically. Freemasonry is based on the machinations of the Society of Jesus, which is, probably one of the oldest secret societies, political orders. You can look at Freemasonry as sort of a Protestant mystical version of the Jesuits. I would have no problem with that description, and I talk about it much more in the book. So check out Royal Arch if you're interested.
Mm-hmm. And we have a question here in the chat. Is his opinion what were the Knights Templars about, in your opinion?
Right. Well, this is very interesting. The Templars were this, again, mystical Roman Catholic warrior brotherhood. They're created to, escort pilgrims to the Holy Land. They're an elite class of warrior monks. I believe that they clearly, when they were in the Holy Land, clearly came in contact with some sort of esoteric wisdom, which they brought back to Europe. When they returned to Europe, you have these Gothic cathedrals, popping up all over the place, incorporating sacred geometry, the golden ratio, the Vesica Pisces. This can't be a coincidence. They tie into Freemasonry because they seem to be supplying these building guilds, these bricklaying guilds, stoneworking guilds with this magical knowledge. This seems to be coming from the Templars, and certainly when they're suppressed, they seem to disappear. They do disappear, and they seem to reemerge as Freemasons. This seems more likely than not the case at this point in time. When Masonry, they tie into Masonry really when, and you should look at the Templars are really proto-Jesuits. That's really what they are. For lack of a better word. When Masonry is founded in 1717, a few years later in 1721, a Presbyterian minister named James Anderson writes something called the Constitutions of the Freemasons. And this document is very critical within Freemasonry. Not only does it set out the bylaws and things like that, but he gives you this magical, I dare say, mystical history of Freemasonry, where he goes back in time to the building of the pyramids. This is the Masons. Goes back to the building of things like the Tower of Babel in the Bible. This is the building. This is the Masons. He'll go back to Adam in the Garden of Eden, and the fig leaf is a Masonic apron. And God taught, the first thing God taught Adam in the Bible is Freemasonry. It's this legendary Masonic history that Anderson presents to you. Years later, a Roman Catholic mystic named Andrew Michael the Chevalier Ramsay, who is a very critical person in all of Masonic history, he comes along in 1737 and writes this thing called the Oration of Masonry. It's Ramsay's Oration to Masonic Lodges. And this oration is what births the high degrees in this Roman Catholic influence. And Ramsay is a Roman Catholic, and he's a tutor of Bonnie Prince Charlie, Charles Edward Stuart, co-founder of the Royal Society. Very, very critical person, and it's his oration of 1737 that births the high degrees and has the schism almost within Freemasonry. And what he says in this oration is he says in this oration, he says, well, Anderson, he says, I don't necessarily disagree with Anderson with the Gothic cathedrals and the stone building and things like that. He said, but where Anderson's wrong is, he says Freemasonry doesn't come out of these biblical stoneworkers. He says Freemasonry is Roman Catholicism. He said, in fact, it's the real Roman Catholic religion. He says, and Freemasonry is born out of this Roman Catholic warrior monk group called the Knights Templar. He said, and they're the progenitors of Freemasonry. He says, and where it comes from is, Ramsay says, he says, when the Knights Templar were in the Holy Land, during the Crusades, they encountered these vestiges of these ancient mystery schools, whether it be the Egyptian mystery religion or Mithraicism or the Pythagorean mystery schools or the Eleusinian mysteries. And they transported these remnants of these mystery schools back to Europe. And this became Freemasonry. And this is what ejects Ramsey is who injects this Roman Catholic Knights Templar element into Freemasonry. That's where it all comes from. And you have this sort of schism from there on out between the high degrees and the Blue Lodge. And again, this is all part of the Counter-Reformation, the Jesuits. And when you understand this dialectic, you'll understand how it's working much more readily, and how it ties in, and how the high degrees differ from the Blue Lodge, what their motivation was, why they become so popular in the United States. Fascinating study, very detailed study. Again, if you're interested, by all means, check out Royal Arch of Enoch. I get into it much more in depth in the book.
Yeah, I encourage everybody to purchase a copy if they haven't already. I'll tell you what. Fascinating information here. So obviously you're at the 32nd degree, and there is an honorary 33rd degree and up. Is that correct?
Right. That's right. When you go through the Blue Lodge and you become a Master Mason or a third degree Mason, at that point in time, other Masonic bodies will open up to you that you can join. And the two premier ones in the United States are the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. Those are the two premier high degree bodies. Scottish Rite is probably a little more popular than York Rite, just because York Rite is what I would call Christian Freemasonry. It ends with the Knights Templar commanderies and encampments. And in order to join the Templars of the York Rite, you have to be Christian. You have to be a Christian exalted to the Royal Arch in the York Rite. So if you're not a Christian, you can't join the Knights Templar. So as such, a lot of people, if you're not Christian, you may not be drawn to the York Rite. And yeah, if you join the Scottish Rite, that's degrees 4 through 32. The 13th degree is the end of the story. The degree structure is out of order. The end of the highest degree of the Scottish Rite is the 13th degree. A lot of the degrees that come after that take place beforehand. The 13th degree is the Holy Royal Arch. This is the 7th degree in the York Rite. This is the end of the Masonic story. This is technically the highest degree of Freemasonry. This is why all the symbolism is coming out of it. It's not the 32nd, it's the 13th. And this is the number 13. If you see this all over the place in Washington, D.C. or on the Great Seal, this is tying into this 13th degree of the Scottish Rite, originally the 13th degree of the Rite of Perfection. Correct. When you join the Scottish Rite, you can go up to the 32nd degree, which is where I am. That's as far as you can go. There is a 33rd degree, but that degree is completely honorary. You have to be invited to join it. You cannot solicit it. It's just by pure invitation only. And it's, various factors determine who they invite it to or offer an invitation to. But it's completely up to them.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you mentioned the 13th degree as being the Rite of Perfection, and that's the highest one, that's the highest ranking degree?
Well, technically, the degree structures are out of order. In the Scottish Rite. You actually go through it. The Rite of Perfection is degrees 4 through 14. And the 13th degree is the Royal Arch Ceremonial. The Royal Arch Ceremonial is the highest degree of Freemasonry. Then you go into the 14th, which is the ending ceremonial. Then when you get into the 15th, 16th, and degrees afterwards, they take place beforehand. You actually go back in time. So numerically, they're higher, but philosophically and of importance, the Royal Arch of Enoch is the end story, is technically the highest degree of Freemasonry. It's the 13th degree of the Scottish Rite. It's the 7th degree of the York Rite. Technically, that's the end of the Masonic story. That's the discovery of the Tetragrammaton. That's the discovery of the underground subterranean treasure vault. And that's the degree where all this esoteric symbolism is coming from, whether it's not the 32nd degree, it's not the 33rd degree. All the esoteric symbolism is coming out of the 13th degree because that's the end of the Masonic story. That's technically the highest degree of Freemasonry.
Wow, that's fascinating. I think I told you before, but my grandfather was a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason. So very, very interested in this area. There's no doubt about that. That's, the 13 is always popping up too, isn't it? Even in the cinema symbolism.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Solaris. When you're dealing with the Great Seal, exoterically, this is the 13 colonies, and they probably waited till there was 13 colonies to go into revolution because it's a symbol of perfection coming out of the Scottish Rite. My goodness gracious, if you look at the Great Seal of the United States, it is festooned quite literally with the number 13. The Scottish Rite Temple in Washington, D.C. sits 13 degrees from the White House. And of course, if you're familiar with Masonic symbolism, the United States presidency is modeled after a Royal Arch of Enoch solar priest. So, the entire presidency is modeled after a Masonic title, a Royal Arch solar priest. So we have the Scottish Rite Temple sitting 13 blocks from the White House. Yeah, my goodness gracious, the Great Seal, the number 13 is omnipresent on that. This again is tying into this 13th degree, the Royal Arch of Enoch, the recovery of the Tetragrammaton. It's the investment of divinity. It's the restoration of God in the degree by discovering the Tetragrammaton. So yeah, this is all coming out of this degree. And again, if you're interested, by all means, check out the Royal Arch of Enoch book. You'll love it.
Absolutely. It's interesting. It's so powerful when you start going into these levels and start decoding this information. It's incredible. This country is based on such a powerful frequency and powerful state of consciousness. When you look at this, if you really look at it on that level. And I have to ask you, what are the adversaries, or who are the adversaries, if at all, of the Masons? Is there anyone that's been trying to undermine or take them down?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's been anti-Masonry since its inception. From day one, a lot of anti-Masonry stems from a man named DeWitt Clinton, who had formed this sort of Masonic cabal and was pulling the strings behind the scenes in the early days of the country. And his cabal was exposed in the 1820s, and this was the formation of anti-Masonry. In fact, it was the first third political party in the United States was the anti-Masonic Party. And what people discovered was DeWitt Clinton was operating this Masonic machine behind the scenes of politics. What he was trying to do was unify the Federalists and the Jeffersonian Republicans. He was doing it behind the scenes. People then soon discovered that there was this Masonic cabal, called the Columbian Illuminati, as it were. And there was this huge Masonic backlash. Many Grand Lodges closed. Masonry, which was looked at this patriotic order, was now looked at this conspiratorial order. And there was this huge Masonic backlash. Masonry survived it, but distanced itself from any esoteric teachings. It basically reemerged as a fraternal order helping widows and orphans. And it survived it, but it was sort of this teaching that carried Masonry through the 19th century into the 20th century. And it really wasn't until the last 20 years that Masonry reemerged, and this great interest in Masonic teachings, and especially on the esoteric side of things, reemerged. So yeah, there's always been, anti-Masons, you want to call it fundamentalist. Christians don't like it, view it as the occult, things like that. It's been that way forever, since, and you always have it. But Masonry has survived it. It's very powerful, and the entire country was modeled after it. Like I said, I call it in the book, the world's first Masonic Republic. And I stand by that. And if you read the book, you'll come to understand that to be the case.
I agree. Yeah, that's very true. Now, let me ask you about the connection between the symbolism behind Jesus and Mother Mary versus the Egyptian mystery schools with Isis. And
of course,
what's the correlation with that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's almost a retelling of it. This is actually what's being reflected in the Blue Lodge ritual. I mean, you want to call it the dying and resurrected God-man. Clearly you have, Isis, the virgin mother of the sun god Horus. You have the death and resurrection of Osiris. You will clear, doing battle with the dark figure, the dark evil lord, call it Set or Typhon. Of course, this is the devil in Christian mythology. So yeah, you will definitely have a parallel between the Christ mythology, the Christ story, and this Egyptian symbolism, with Virgin Mary birthing the sun god Jesus, and of course the Virgin Mother Isis birthing the sun god Horus, the death and resurrection of Osiris. There is a complete parallel there with between Christianity and Egypt, and even in the Masonic ritual. You have the death and resurrection of Hiram Abiff being brought back to life on the 5 points of fellowship. The 5 points are a pentagram. Well, what's the symbol of the pentagram in Freemasonry? It's the Egyptian dog star Sirius, which is the star associated with Isis, the Virgin Mother. You will find these parallels. Mozart did this in the Magic Flute, where the Queen of the Night is the Virgin Mary, but she's the Virgin Mary corrupted. And she's the Queen of the Night because she's stolen the attributes of Isis, the sun and the moon. And it's a parallel. That's why she's the villain. Is because she's, the Virgin Mary is just a comparative knockoff of the Virgin Mary Isis from the Egyptian mythology. So yeah, absolutely. And clearly, you will have parallels with Jesus, and it comes out of Neoplatonic thought with the sun. Of course, Jesus says, his followers are children of light and to be like the sun. And of course, the holiday of Christmas is the winter solstice, the resurrection of the sun, or excuse me, the birthday of the sun. Then the resurrection of Jesus is at the vernal equinox when the sun is resurrected from the 3-month tomb of winter. The 12 apostles or the 12 houses of the zodiac that assist the sun on his annual travel. So, yeah, we completely have this astrological solar mysterion of Jesus, and the Bible. We have it at the Vatican. St. Paul's Cathedral is the domed building, the sun god, the chamber of the sun god. Again, so yeah, we have complete parallels with Jesus, the Osirian, Isis mystery schools. And again, you'll find this in popular culture. Look no farther than Mozart's Masonic opera, The Magic Flute, with the Queen of the Night, where she's the Virgin Mary as Isis corrupted. That's, again, why she's the Queen of the Night. So absolutely definite parallels there. And, again, you'll find it reflected in the Masonic Blue Lodge ritual. So, by all means, I don't disagree with that. I totally agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems to me like the Christianity is a spinoff of Egyptian mystery school teachings.
Oh, of course. But
they don't want to acknowledge that.
Huh?
They don't want to acknowledge that. A lot of the Christians do, and it doesn't make sense to me. I just don't understand why they don't step it up and just.
Oh, absolutely not. They don't want to acknowledge it because then, when you understand that the Bible is an allegory, the whole thing falls apart. The birthday, the December 25th is 3 days after the winter solstice. This is why, Jesus is born on, December 25th. You have the astral alignment in the sky. Where on the sunrise of December 25th, the Egyptian dog star Sirius, the Virgin Mother Isis, is aligned with the 3 stars in Orion's belt, the 3 kings. This is why 3 kings followed the Eastern Star to locate, the birth date of Jesus, the birthday of the birth of the sun on the 25th. The 12 apostles are, the 12 houses of the zodiac. And then I get into the breakdown in the Royal Arch. The first apostle is Peter, Petra, Greek for the rock. This is the rock that Jesus will found his church. The 3 fire signs: Aries, Leo, who is John, and then the other one is Sagittarius. I forget which one of those. Jesus is the sun god. This is why the 3 Leo signs are always the most active in promoting the Christian teachings. The one, which one is it? Is the tax collector, uses the scales as Libra. Judas is, of course, Scorpio. That's the Set character, the betrayer, who gives the kiss of death, the sting, the death toll, the death sting of, to the son, sending him into death or crucifixion. Yeah, the whole thing with Christianity is just one giant astrological allegory. You could craft the argument, and this is what Albert Pike and Manly P. Hall do, is what they do in their books is they say, well, this is true. This whole astrological solar symbolism is going on around Jesus, but what they attribute it to is they say, well, they're probably, or there could have been, they don't want to offend Christians, and I understand it. I don't want to offend them either. So the way they work around this is they say, well, there was a real Jesus Christ. There was a real divine figure running around in the Holy Lands. They said, but 200 years later, when this religion was being crafted around this guy, at the Council of Nicaea, the pagans who were inventing Christianity were just using the old solar lore that they were familiar with to craft the religion around. So, there was a real Jesus, but they just modeled the religion around all the ancient mystery school teachings surrounding the sun. Of course, many people will say that's not the case, that it was just crafted out of thin air, just modeled around the sun. Some people will say that as well. But without question, the Christian holidays, Christmas, the vernal equinox, the Easter. I mean, that's all the sun. 12 apostles, 12 houses of the zodiac. Jesus, the resurrected sun in the morning. Defeating the works of darkness or the nighttime sky. This is all Zoroastrianism, Neo-Manichaeanism. You want to say there's probably not a whole lot of originality within Christianity. It's just all the retelling of the old solar astrological lore, just all rebranded. And there you have it. And again, you'll find it in Freemasonry. This is part of the esoteric teachings of Masonry. I mean, you have the death and resurrection of the God-man, Hiram Abiff, 12 fellow craft go looking for him, 12 apostles, 12 houses of the zodiac going looking for their lost solar ruler. So you always, this is always a way to tell this astrological solar lore. And I agree with you, Solaris. I mean, I think it's without question a parallel, and it's definitely not coincidence.
I agree. Yeah, there's way too much there, synchronicity wise, to even, say it's a coincidence. There's no doubt that's it, or not a coincidence rather. But that's fascinating, right there. Wow, what a lot of information you've been giving us tonight. I know we have about 15 minutes plus or minus here. So once again, before we close up here, I know we have time to talk some more, but I want to make sure everybody is able to access your books, and we're going to get those. They're all available on Amazon, but go ahead and give them a rundown insofar as how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, all the books are available in all the major online retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can get them overseas as well. They're all in print form. Pact with the Devil, which was just released, is not in the ebook form yet, but you can certainly get the print edition. This book was released on December 5th. That date was chosen by me intentionally. This is the December 5th is Krampusnacht, the night when the demon god Krampus comes out to punish all the evil people. So I released the book on that date intentionally because there is a demon in the book, and the book involves witchcraft. So I intentionally picked the date of December 5th to release the book, which is Krampusnacht, when Krampus comes out and wreaks all kind of havoc in hell. If you're interested, you can find them on all the main online retailers. Go to my website. Alternatively, my website is my name. My name is Robert W. Sullivan IV. So my website is www.robertwsullivaniv.com. Links there to buy the books. Like I said, you can get the ebook of Royal Arch Cinema Symbolism and Cinema Symbolism 2. Ebook of Pact with the Devil is still 2-3 weeks away, but the print editions are always there. Again, available on all major online retail sellers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and again, overseas as well. Links on my website to buy the books. It's a very easy page to navigate. I have an events and appearance page about upcoming radio shows and podcasts and TV appearances or lectures I'll be doing. Links to follow me on social media, Twitter. I have a YouTube channel with loads of archived interviews on it. I'm sure this one will probably be there soon enough. Links to follow me on Twitter, links to buy the books, but my biography, you can check that out. Again, go to the website. It's all there. Very easy to navigate. RobertWSullivaniv.com, www.robertwsullivaniv.com.
Well, it's always an honor to interview. I tell you what, you are the man when it comes down to this type of information with the Masons, and certainly appreciate it, as I said. And also, I know we're going to wrap this up pretty soon, but I did want to ask you a little bit about, we were discussing the D.C. area, the White House, and some of the information. I know you touched on this in your book about the Arch of Enoch, the Royal Arch of Enoch, insofar as the pentagrams connecting or intersecting with streets over the White House.
Right. You have the pentagram in Masonry is the Egyptian dog star Sirius. In DC, it's a broken pentagram. That's intentionally done as well.
Why is that?
Well, we're not going to have time. I was going to say that's too long to get into. But I explain it more in the book. It's a long story, but it is explained in the book. But yeah, the point I'm making is when you get into this esoteric architecture, you will find a decidedly Masonic influence, whether it be the Washington Monument, the domed Capitol building, Pennsylvania Avenue being the hypotenuse of the 47th proposition of Euclid right there in Washington, D.C. I mean, we get into, it's a real deep study of a lot of the esoteric architecture, whether it be the George Washington Masonic Memorial, the St. Louis Gateway Arch, the Statue of Liberty. This is all Freemasonic. This is all coming out of the world of Freemasonry. Washington, D.C., the templates. You'll find it in Baltimore, Maryland. You'll find it with the Erie Canal. You'll find it with Union College. It's a real deep study. But by all means, if you're interested in Masonic architecture and symbolism, check out my first book, The Royal Arch of Enoch. And of course, if you're interested in the movie symbolism, cinema symbolism too. And by all means, check out my first work of fiction, A Pact with the Devil. Print edition available right now. Ebook still about 3 weeks away.
Nice. I still like the physical books. I'm one for highlighting and, bunny earring.
Yeah.
When I read my books.
That's the way I am.
Yeah.
That's the way I am. I like the physical copies as well. But I know people who use the Kindle and they swear by it. They love it.
Yeah.
So the ebooks are a lot cheaper. Certainly they're more eco-friendly. And the packed with the other ones are out in the ebooks right now. Royal Arch Cinema Symbolism and Cinemas CS2 is out on. You can get the Kindles of those. Packed with the Devil, the print edition is right now. Ebook for that is about 2-3 weeks away, but there will be an ebook of it. Make no mistake about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what I like about what you're doing with the cinema symbolism, because so many people are out there, once again, misperceptions as far as what they're seeing on film and assuming that it's a certain way, but yet you're breaking everything down in code or decoding it your way, which is more in alignment with the real teachings behind it, in my opinion. So I think that's very important. And I know that you've touched on NASA and the Apollo 13 emblem, which is also very symbolic, correct?
Oh, absolutely. You will find a lot of esoteric symbolism with a lot of the, NASA symbolism, the logos. I get into the 13 and the Apollo 13. Again, we have the sun symbolism. That's a deep study, but I get into that in the book. But, you have the whole thing with the moon. The eagle has landed, think the Scottish Rite, the double-headed eagle again. When they went to the moon on Apollo 11, this is absolutely true. They actually took a Masonic flag with them. Buzz Aldrin, who's a Mason, actually took a Scottish Rite flag with him when he went to the moon, second man on the moon. So I think the eagle had legitimately landed. The flag has the double eagle on it. This is well known. You can actually, if you go to the Scottish Rite Temple in Washington, D.C., you can see the flag in the library. It's on display. So, yeah, a Scottish Rite Masonic flag actually went to the moon. That's interesting. And there's a lot of Masonic symbolism, a lot of esoteric symbolism going on with the NASA logos and the moon missions. I mean, think, the Apollo mission. The Apollo is the sun god. The moon is, of course, the sacred feminine. So it's the unification Apollo, the sun god with the moon, the male and female, the Rosicrucian alchemical wedding there. Interesting. This is something, again, I get into in Royal Arch of Enoch, which is something I'll also be revisiting in the next Masonic book I'm working on. So I totally agree with that. Fascinating study. Again, check it out in the book.
Mm-hmm. And when is your new book going to be out? I know you just cranked this one out, but when is your sequel going to be out? Any ideas?
Oh no, because I'm writing 5 books at once right now. But,
wow. Okay.
But what's going to happen, I think, is this one book that I've been that I can't talk about right now. That I've been contacted to write. This is probably going to be coming to fruition in the next coming weeks or months or so, and I can't talk about the subject matter. But if this goes into effect, and I think it likely will, then that's going to be my full focus at that point, because I'll be under contract to do it. And that's going to take me. I'm going to try to do it as fast as possible, but I got a feeling that's going to be about a year and a half away. But right now, what I'm doing is I'm writing 4 at once. I'm doing another Masonic book. I'm doing CS3, and I'm doing these 2 works of fiction. Right now, I'm probably concentrating on the work of fiction more than anything else. But I have a feeling that I'm going to be putting all these down in the coming weeks to work on this other book. But unfortunately, I can't get into the subject matter of what that book is just yet. I'll know more in the coming weeks, coming months. But right now I just can't talk about it. But I have a feeling that's going to take over, coming up.
Right. Well, you'll be back. I know that much. So
Sure.
What has been your favorite movie to decode so far?
Oh boy. Boy, that's a tough one. I like doing all of it. I liked the 2 that really stand out with me were the Shining and then Crimson Peak, because those movies overlap. Crimson Peak is really a deep study in comparative cinema, because there's a lot going on in The Shining, which is fascinating. And then there's a lot going on in Crimson Peak, which is fascinating, which relates to The Shining. Guillermo del Toro, who directed Crimson Peak, that movie is just a giant homage to The Shining. and he did it intentionally. And that's a really fascinating study, and I really enjoyed doing that when I was writing Cinema Symbolism 2. I also enjoyed esoterically decoding the spaghetti western movies of Sergio Leone. I'm a huge fan of those films, and I really liked. There's a lot of religious symbolism going on in those, so I really enjoyed that as well. I enjoy. I'm enjoying all of it. There's some movies I like more than other movies, but there are some movies that I like that doesn't have esoteric imagery in it. So I only do the movies that has the esoteric imagery, that has the hidden symbolism in it. If it's in there and I see it and I'm confident that it's there, then I'll decode it. Alternatively, if it's not there, then I leave it alone. The Shining's a good one. Crimson Peak was fun. The spaghetti westerns were fun. I mean, so many. I love taking on The Exorcist. I love The Wizard of Oz. All good stuff there. All very interesting movies to take on. You like those, by all means, check out the 2 movie books. Again, print edition or ebook, take your pick.
Yeah, and once again, like I said, they're great gifts for the holidays. So, stocking stuffers or whatever. I think that's one of the best gifts you can give somebody, something to read. Good, something really good.
Absolutely. To read. And you got, with Christmas, the holidays right here upon us. You got something for Freemasonry. You got a movie lover. You can get the movie book. You want something with fiction, something dark, involving witchcraft or something like that. Packed with the Devil. You probably like that. Has a murder mystery in it. Has some erotic elements in it. Actually has some comedy in it as well. I'm real happy with the way it came out. You never know how someone's going to like it, of course. But for my first work of fiction, I was really pleased with it. So yeah, I try to be diverse. We have Freemasonry, we have movies, we have fiction. With the holidays, they make a perfect gift. By all means, and like I said, they're very easy to find. They're on all major online retailers. Pact with the Devil was just released. That's coming on right now. That's coming online, but I know it's on Amazon. So by all means, check out those books. They make a perfect Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa gift, whatever, winter solstice, whatever be your cup of tea.
Yep, absolutely. So what I've noticed now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't noticed very many films about Freemasons in general.
Well, yeah, there's I would say National Treasure. Treasure 2 has some Masonic elements. The Man Who Would Be King has a Masonic, definitely has a Masonic overtone in it. From Hell has some Freemasonry in it. That was based on a movie called Murder by Decree. That also has some Freemasonry in it. You could check out those for Masonic elements. You'll have characters in the background wearing a Masonic ring or something like that. You'll find Freemasonry in film. Check out National Treasure. That's a Masonic ritual. That's that's a movie I decoded in my first book, The Royal Arch of Enoch. That actually has, that's the restoration of the Masonic treasure in the subterranean vault. So if you want to watch a Masonic ritual on screen, check out check out National Treasure. I decode that in the Royal Arch of Enoch book. So check out all my books. Whatever be your fancy, movies, Freemasonry, fiction. Knock yourself out.
Yep. Exactly. There's a lot to explore there. There's no doubt about it. What about Jack the Ripper? Have you done much research on him?
Yeah, there's a whole conspiracy that he was a Freemason and this was a Masonic plot. I do not think that to be the case. It's an interesting bedtime story. It makes for an interesting story. I get into the movie From Hell, which is in Cinema Symbolism 2. That's based on the works of Alan Moore, who's a neo-Gnostic and occultist. I took on 3 of his movies in Cinema Symbolism 2, From Hell, V for Vendetta, and Watchmen, all 3 overloaded with esoteric imagery. But the Jack the Ripper story, it's very interesting. The whole Masonic influence, I think it's more fiction than anything. But nevertheless, it makes for a great story. And if you like From Hell, read Cinema Symbolism 2, because there's all sorts of overload, all sorts of esoteric imagery going on inside that film.
Yeah, I like The Watchmen. I thought that was pretty interesting. But I like comic books, so I don't know if you've done much with those or not.
Yeah, well, I did the 3 Alan Moore, films from Hell. I know we're running out of time here. So, yeah, if you like Alan Moore, then by all means, check out Cinema Symbolism 2 for V for Vendetta, Watchmen, and From Hell. Great movies and esoteric imagery, plenty in those films.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, we are just about out of time here in The Illusion of. I must say, Robert, it's been a pleasure and an honor to interview you as always. And I wish you a wonderful holiday, whatever you celebrate. I hope it's fabulous with a wonderful new year and great success with your new book.
Well, thank you, Solaris, for having me on. It was a great show tonight. I really appreciate it. Have a good night as well.
You too. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. And make sure that you stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Becky coming up next to sail you on to the night from Down Under with their wonderful show as they always do. I will be joining them for the first hour. So make sure you tune in. All right, everybody. Thank you again, Robert. Have a wonderful week.
Okay, good night.
Night.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Message to our listeners. Revolution Radio is you. Thanks to your continuous support and participation, Revolution Radio will embark to its 8th year. Yoo-hoo! Bigger and better than ever. You, the listeners, have made Revolution Radio what it is. The #1 commercial-free talk radio station on the web with nearly 24 hours of live programming, delivering directly to you the most cutting-edge information available. You, the listeners, have become some of our most popular radio hosts. You, the listeners, offer feedback that molds our programming to appeal to a worldwide audience. You, the listener, provide eyes on the ground, reporting about newsworthy events in your area, and you, the listener, are the lifeblood of this station. We love you, and thank you for being a treasured member of our Revolution Radio family. From all of us to all of you, have a happy and safe holiday season, and let's make this new year a success once again together. Thank you. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands